Okay, I'd like to call the March 28th, 2023 Infrastructure Committee meeting to order. I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from February 28th.
Second.
Okay,
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes approved. Okay, is there any public, the first agenda item under information for discussion is the collapsed retaining wall of near 2 Elmore.
Sure. If I may, and then I may need some help from the borough engineer on this topic. So our council president was out taking a walk, as he usually does around the borough, and brought to our attention down there by 2 Elmwood that the retaining wall that goes to the channel there collapsed. I provided that photo to the borough engineer, and because the borough, we're going to talk later, and we talked before about at 3 Elmwood and elsewhere where the borough owns repairing that channel ourselves. So I asked the borough engineer about what role the borough would potentially have in the portion of it at 2 Elmwood that's collapsed. And I don't want to misquote Eric. So Eric, I'll let you take it from there.
Right. So I think it was raised as this wall was failing and what could be done about it. And I mean, it needs to be repaired, but generally the ownership of the waterways, the stream banks that run across private property is the responsibility of the property owner. So in this case, this property actually goes, although there are Elm Avenue property, they actually go all the way out to Wynwood. That's the frontage there. So the creek crosses their properties. So this retaining wall is on the property to be able to repair it. I think the idea that Samantha was outlining it here is, although we are not in the position that we would replace it, given that we are planning on doing work right down, basically abutting their property at the bridge, the Elm Avenue crossing to repair the walls and the right of way, the portion that we own, that we could extend to the homeowner to include this work if they so choose to complete it while we're out there already having a contractor doing like work.
Yeah, so basically what I was looking for, so again, to kind of summarize what Eric said, 2 Elmwood is private property, so it is mostly their responsibility to repair it. However, the borough is literally going to be next door doing repair work. So it might be some savings for the private property owner if that portion of the work was incorporated in what the borough is already doing. So I just want to chat with the committee and make sure you all are fine with me and Eric making outreach to the property owner to let them know that A, they need to fix that wall, but B, that if they wanted to, join in with the borough's bid and help offset those costs, that we would be willing to allow them to do so. If that's fine with the committee.
So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So the retaining wall, because it's damaged, is putting sediment into the stream as well. So it's not good for water.
Yeah, and it's also, with the amount of Eric's the engineer here, but just as an amateur looking at the amount of stone that fell into the channel as part of it, that can't be good for the channel's function either.
Are they required to fix it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's irresponsible. Creek channel is the homeowner's responsibility, and usually when it's a meandering creek, it's not as nobody really gets too involved. But this is a pretty narrow area of the stream.
What happens if they say no?
Well, in my opinion, with Eric and the committee's blessing, the borough would incorporate the work as part of the project we're going to do, and we would have to lien the property owner for it.
So I support what you suggested. Doing the work on our end and then getting reimbursed by the owner.
Okay. Michelle, any comments?
No, I agree with that approach.
Okay, thanks. So, yes, make the outreach. And then, I think we're gonna, skip the master park, plan right now, because I think,
Oh, Dennis
Dennis
is gonna join the
call.
call.
If he doesn't join, then we'll pick that up anyway. Okay, and then the next item is the final draft of the park control form policy.
Yeah, so included in your packet, we talked about this off and on for the last year or so. This would allow for private rental of select portions of Narberth and Sabine Park. Ultimately, the borough would probably later build on this for other sort of sections and concepts, but for now, for the most in-demand areas of the park, being the gazebo and that sort of area, that's what this is intended to provide a solution to. Our office manager actually brought something to my attention that I realized this policy didn't cover that I want a last bit of feedback on. We don't have any policy regarding like rain out. So I wasn't sure if we had any thoughts about how to handle that. My thought would be if there's inclement weather on a date someone reserves, that they would have the option of either getting a refund or the option of scheduling an alternate date for their event if they have we can't control the weather, so.
Okay, well, I think we should, get the money back. So,
Yeah.
But otherwise, I feel, pretty happy about where this is at.
Just gonna go to council.
If you're all fine with it. Now, I will put the caveat, Parks and Rec did not have a chance. It has been provided to the Parks and Rec chair, but they did not have a chance to discuss it at their March meeting. So I didn't know if this group wanted to wait for Parks and Rec in April to look at it and then council to take it. Yeah, that's kind of my concern as well, is like the weather's getting to that time of year. And Parks and Rec did previously review the earlier draft and provided feedback that this new draft incorporated. So, again, I don't want to like end around Parks and Rec, but I do feel like they've been a part of this conversation. And given where we're at time wise, I think, I would support it going on to council if you all are fine with that.
That's fine. I think we can also send an email out and just flag it if anyone has any concerns.
That's true, yeah. Like after this meeting, I could send it to Parks and Rec and like let them know individually, let me know if you have any concerns before council would take a look at it.
Okay. The next item is the IT contract renewal.
Sure, this is probably more to an FYI kind of item than anything. Again, as you all have seen over the past few months or so, I kind of like to get a temperature check from you all, even for things that are solely within my discretion to handle. So the borough's IT contract is up for renewal. My thanks to Ira, who with his background helped me review the proposals that we got. We got a proposal from our current vendor, as well as just to kind of sanity check, we got a price from a proposal from an alternate vendor. Both of those are included in your packet. Reviewing the proposals, I felt, and I don't want to put words in Ira's mouth, but I felt like Ira felt that it was in the best interest of the borough to stick with our current IT provider. The alternate proposal wasn't really any different on a price point. And they had a couple of things with their service that I thought were interesting, but not enough to warrant, when you make any change in service, there's a learning curve, there's things going on with that. And especially with the learning curve that our assistant manager is already dealing with a new IT firm, I felt for now was the last thing he would need to worry about. So, so my recommendation is that we move forward with a 3-year renewal with the current vendor.
So just to, so I looked at it, it was originally for 5 years. And I had suggested that they lower it to 3. Did that change the price at all?
It didn't change the service price. It did change the hardware that's included as part of it. Instead of amortizing it over 5 years, it's amortized over 3 years now. So that went up, but that was gonna be the same cost. And
Well, so I just think that it's an opportunity to rethink this after releasing the period. 5 years is a long time in the IT.
Yeah,
And you mentioned, there were some service issues, were they like major service issues, or have they addressed them?
they weren't major, they were minor, and I will say in the last year, our point of contact with our current IT firm changed. And frankly, the new point of contact is far, far better than the prior point of contact. So I feel more comfortable with the borough working with this person as opposed to the one we were dealing with before.
Right, I mean, the biggest sticking point, which we're probably not gonna get around is, the notion that when you've got a new computer, you had to pay them to set it up, rather than it being included in the cost.
Right.
But that's probably the same case for the end provider.
Yeah, it was the same case for the other provider, that whenever you have a new computer, that's not included in the contract price. So, yeah, that's just a business standard, unfortunately.
Okay, so, I know it's just information, but let me know, like, do you have to go to council with this, or?
No, looking at the manager ordinance empowers me to approve contracts like this, so I will move forward with approving that contract, and that way that's one less thing that the borough has to worry about.
Okay, moving on to current borough projects. I guess I saw a few minutes ago the minutes of the bridge meeting came out. I was unclear what that meant in terms of like getting your peak of it.
So good news and bad news on Pico so far. Good news is the gas part of it, that's all pretty much taken care of now. And originally they wanted us to do like a temporary gas line while we were doing work on the bridge. And they ultimately decided we don't have to do that. They can provide gas service through other means while we're doing the work on the bridge. The electric remains an issue. There's been continued meetings and back and forth between the borough engineer and Pico about this. I think we're like 95% of the way to resolution on it. I think our next bridge status meeting isn't this, I'm sorry, it'll be next Tuesday. And I'm fairly confident by that meeting it will be resolved, so we can then actually start moving forward with starting to put together bid documents and construction documents. And Pnoni is scheduled to present to council at your May work session about the status of the project. And Jim Regal and Jim Markham from Pnoni will be able to directly answer any questions from council and the public about the project status and where we're at.
So what's the date of that next meeting? Status meetings.
So the next meeting I have with Pnoni is next Tuesday.
So what's that? Date?
Oh, that would be April
Tuesday is the 4th.
thank you, April 4th.
I'm sorry, you said, Pnoni is, presenting the Borough Council workshop session?
Correct, in May, yeah. Again, there have been a lot of I won't call them setbacks. I mean, there have been a lot of things outside of our control in this process that have added time onto the project, which has been frustrating. But we are very hopeful that the May meeting, when Pnoni comes to council again, you can really have a serious conversation about picking a contractor to actually do the work, with the hope being that when Amtrak's next funding cycle in September starts, that the work could actually begin then.
Okay, so it's the May Borough Council workshop meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to Town Square. Simone Collins presented the phase 1 plan on January 5th. Any news on the cost estimates?
Shoot, no, I need to ask them about that. I had called this morning with Bill Collins, and I forgot to ask them about that. After this meeting, I'll follow up with them about it.
Okay, I can sort it in this meeting. And then it looks like we were awarded multimodal.
Yeah, the borough did get $270,000 in multimodal funding to develop a plan from the site plan Simone Collins did for us. to something that would be constructible and something we could actually put out to bid.
And so is it accurate to say that, the work on the project is waiting, it's already in the development of 230 Network?
That is correct.
Okay, and is there any like time limitations in this grant?
Like 3 years.
Usually 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, now, okay, any updates on the 100 Conway improvements, or is that going to go to
We don't really need to delve into that. The only one thing I do in there is we were also awarded $250,000 local share account grant. And I know we had spoken about potentially using that money for the boiler replacement here at Borough Hall. However, I want to talk about 80, that's a few items down. Before we commit that money, I think we need to discuss the 80 Windsor roof situation.
Okay, sidewalk inspection is on track.
Yeah, I was hoping to have an inspection form to show off today. Kevin Walsh, our code enforcement officer, unfortunately had an unexpected personal situation he had to deal with last week. But no, we're pretty much ready to go. Kevin and Jeff have pretty much worked everything out, and I think we're in really good shape with that, right, Jeff?
Okay, the EV charger, so those are limited.
Well, no, I think we can make it pretty quick if you want.
I was gonna make it,
I'll do the quick version.
okay, good.
So 4 of the 5 chargers have been installed. We're working with Pico to get them, connected to electrical service, at which point Flow will activate the network on them and they'll be in use. And then it's just going to be a future council conversation about what happens with the charger.
Great, thanks, okay. On to the main event before we have the dentistry is the 80 Windsor Avenue West New.
Sure. So my thanks to Michelle, actually, she had forwarded me some information from like a decade ago about some concerns that community members had about the roof over there. And thankfully, we were able to get in touch with the same engineer who did that inspection a decade ago to try and find out what work, if any, happened since then. And unfortunately, the answer was nothing had happened with it since then. So I'm sure it will not shock anyone that given nothing happened, the roof did not magically get in better shape over the last 10 years. It has gotten in worse shape. The main problem is I'm not a mechanical person, as many of you know by now, so I'm going to do my best here. It's a roof that's shaped like this. And in order to keep it upright like this, you have to have, a pair of rafters going through it. The rafters that we have, the building was built like 100 years ago. It wasn't like really engineered when they built it. It was more kind of like guess and check kind of thing. So unfortunately, the weight of the roof is too much weight for the rafter to bear. And so where the roof and the rafter connect, they've broken in several spots. So in the library portion of 80 Windsor, like 2 or 3 rafters are broken. It's frankly so bad that the engineer recommended to us that if there was a heavy snow, we would have to close the library because the extra weight on the roof would potentially cause a roof collapse. So thankfully the west and east wing are marginally better and that you wouldn't have to do that, but they have broken rafters as well. So I'm going to skip the horrifying part that was originally written. So the engineer came out and he met with me and Jeff and Kevin, our building and the code official. And he originally had a plan for the roof to fix the problem that would be incredibly expensive and incredibly invasive. It would have required completely removing the roof and ceiling and insulation and rafters and basically replacing all of them. thankfully, a week later, he called me and was like, hey, I think I came up with a different idea for this, which is included in your packet. The idea that he came up with since then, that he is very confident would solve the problem, is to actually, again, you have a drawing of this in your packet, so I'm not gonna embarrass myself here too much. But basically, so if this is like one portion of the roof and one half of the rafter, instead of replacing all that, you would put a support beam under where the roof and the rafter meet each other. And he ran that through his engineering models and did an analysis on that and found that would solve the problem without having to replace the roof and the ceiling and the insulation and displace everyone in the building and all that. So I think obviously that's the solution I think we should pursue. That being said, down the line, I mean, the roof on that building is the original slate roof. We did talk about down the line, probably in the next 2 or 3 years, the borough would want to replace that slate roof. Especially if we want to do things like solar panels and that kind of thing. If we did these beams and we took all that weight of that slate roof off and put something else, then we could put the weight of solar panels on that roof. But anyway, for today, I'm recommending that we give authorization to Yerkes, and Benoni is working on plenty of things for the borough right now. So Yerkes and their engineering team to work with Green Cottage Industries, the engineer who did this inspection, to develop bid plans for the beam idea. And then down the line, once we know for sure how much that is, we can use some of the money we got. We can offset spending elsewhere thanks to the LSA grant to cover this unexpected expense. And then depending on how much that ends up costing, we then might still have the funds to replace the boiler with an electric heat system.
Now, with the roof going in like that, was there also damage to the wall? Was there?
So thankfully not too bad. He did show me and Jeff and Kevin how if you look at the walls, they are a few inches off. However, he didn't think that was a problematic sort of thing. And again, in addition to the beam, like I said, 2-3 years from now, if you replace the slate roof, that'll solve other problems with it.
But we wouldn't then have to other rafters, because you also.
Exactly. Yeah.
Looking at the report, has a pretty good summary made of it there
Thank you.
for a non-technical version. Yeah. And that is a much better option than that original. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I told him we'd do whatever we need to do, but I was not looking forward to. I do still have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the users of 80 Windsor to talk about what's going on. And I scheduled that meeting with the attempt that I was really going to have to kind of drop some news on them. We're still going to have that meeting so I can talk to them about it, but I think this will be much easier news to share than what I was originally expecting.
Did they say when the roof will eventually have to be replaced, the slate roof?
He didn't give a specific recommendation, but my understanding is slate roofs generally last about 100 years. So the building was built in 1926. So we're about at that point. Okay. All right, so what I will do then is I'll have Yerkes and Green Cottage Industries work on a bid document, and then we'll present that to council for advertising approval.
Any concerns, Michelle?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think if I understand correctly, the first plan, the super expensive plan, involved taking the roof off, right? And replacing everything. And so just to make it clear, that slate roof was not going back on, no matter what.
Right.
I think it's important to understand we're not choosing a solution that there are going to be people upset about the loss of the slate roof. I mean, that's just going to happen, but it was inevitably going to. I mean, it's at the end of its useful life, and we're not making a choice that compromises the roof, either choice. I mean, it wasn't within our power to prolong the life of the roof. I just want to say that, make that clear.
Thanks. Okay, I think we talked about the, Elmwood stream bed. So the money's been budgeted and the drawings will be, are being prepared.
Right, no, that changed that.
And similarly for the low volume road grant, the package is.
Same thing, they've got the grant money, survey's been done, and work on.
Great, so I guess that rolls us back to the master park plan. You know, I've been able to glean from various emails and, you know, looking at the document, the decommission that was sent around, we really need to, you know, determine the membership of this steering
So,
committee,
if I
but it's a
may,
study committee, yeah.
So, yeah, I had a call, last Thursday with, our DCNR person assigned to this project. And before we can actually start working on the master park plan, the things they need us to do are, and this is different from past projects that I've done with this. This is a little more hands-on from DCNR than I'm frankly used to. They have to approve our study committee, as they call it. And basically they recommended to me when I told them the current membership that we expand it from the current 4 members to 7 and use those other 3 spots to expand the perspectives and viewpoints involved on the group. We had talked about a model before where we would have the people who would vote, and then we have various stakeholders who would attend the meetings but not have votes. However, it sounds like DCNR would prefer some of those parties who we had previously envisioned as stakeholders to actually be voting members of the group. And so that's one thing we'll have to do. DC will have to submit a list of those people and what sort of roles they're fulfilling to DCNR for their approval. The next component after we have that group put together, that group then has to put together a scope of work for the project that DCNR has to approve. DCNR did provide us with like a template that we could work off of. You know, I'll admit I haven't had a chance to thoroughly look at the template because again, it's ultimately going to be the study group that or study committee that's going to make the decision about what the scope of work is. But that's another thing we'll have to get done. And then once we have the scope of work approved by DCNR, then we are going to be required to do an RFP. I know this body, council, Parks and Rec, had all talked about why it made sense for the borough to work with Simone Collins. And we certainly still could. Part of the thing I'll note about this RFP process is, though we have to do it, the borough still ultimately can choose whatever, it's a professional service. So the borough can choose whatever vendor we want at the end of the process. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through that, but we will have to work with DCNR on that. And thankfully, Alan already has a lot of experience with this. It's the same person at North Wales, his prior employer, was awarded similar grant funding recently. And it's actually because both are in Montgomery County, it's the same DCNR route. So I think at the staff level, I hope that, you know, depending on the needs of the borough, that Alan will be an asset for helping us through this administrative process to actually start work on the master park plan.
So, you know, they sent us quite a list of people who could be on the committee. Right, but now that you say we only need 7, so it doesn't mean we have to meet every one. And I think that some of the emails floating around were trying to like put someone in each category.
Right.
So like if we didn't do the like lower in school district, well, okay, so we can still pick one of the other categories that's maybe more relevant to this project.
Exactly. They just wanted to see more. And I thought it was good. I saw how we had, even amongst the Parks and Rec board members, how some of those folks could fulfill multiple roles in that list DCNR had. I think we just need to just make sure we're showing that we've covered not all the bases, but a lot of the bases on that list that they provided of the sort of folks they'd like to see involved. They basically just want to make sure that it wasn't just the Parks and Rec board and borough staff that were involved in this.
Okay, well, so, I mean, there are Parks and Rec. Is like. After discussing, who should be on this steering committee. Another question was asked that I asked you and you answered is, given the staffing transitions going on here, like, how quickly do we need to take the next step? And you said, well, there's not like a timeline for the next step, but the whole project needs to be completed by the end of 2025.
Right.
Does that mean like construction as well?
No, that just means just the plan.
Okay, well, so,
And, but I do know, there previously was a desire on council. Because ultimately we can't really, I'm not comfortable, and I think many folks here in this room as well, aren't really comfortable making major investment in any of our parks until we have this master park plan done. So that's the other caveat too, is really no substantial investments going to happen in parks until the plan is done.
yeah, I get that, but on the other hand,
Right.
we're not risking losing the money.
No,
That's what I was, kind of like, just wanted to emphasize, because that was like the first question that people asked me
yeah,
when I said this and this, and I don't know, it's the plan.
exactly. And just speaking of construction as well, I'm still here to share this info. And this is, again, probably something Alan is already familiar with as well, and probably Eric too from his work. The way DCNR likes to do things, which is really nice, is they like to almost see a project all the way through. In the sense, a lot of times a project that gets DCNR acquisition funds is generally more competitive to get planning funds. And then projects that have gotten planning funds from DCNR are more competitive to get construction funds from DCNR.
Right.
So I would certainly strongly encourage the borough, once the plan is done, to then apply for development funds from DCNR.
Just so I understand the process for the study committee, who's reaching out to the potential members and.
So, well, I think what needs to happen is, either this body or Parks and Rec needs to decide who we are going to make outreach to. And then a designee either from this body or Parks and Rec should then make that outreach.
And then once we have the confirmed members, it has to be approved by council.
Yeah, so council would have to approve the members, and then once council has done that, then someone in the office will need to submit that list to DCNR for their approval.
And then do the meetings, do they need to be public, or are they voted into the Parks and Rec meeting?
So they do not need to be public. That public participation memo from DCNR actually talks a little bit about that. And as we talked before, part of why we just have 3 members of Parks and Rec originally involved was, there's going to be lots of opportunity for public participation as part of this process, but not all of the meetings are going to be open to the public.
Okay, so there's probably gonna have to be some discussion from Parks and Rec, because I think the original plan was to have their steering committee for the subcommittee roll it into their regular Parks and Rec meeting, monthly meeting. So it's probably going to have to be separated.
Yeah, probably so.
Michelle, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay,
Did you want to update the Parks and Rec meeting?
sure, it wasn't on the list, we can certainly get that.
I don't know if that's the stream.
He's not on the participant list.
So on March 8th, Parks and Rec met and they had the annual park users meeting. So there's some park users that were in this meeting, but Melissa O'Connor from NAA and Will Thomas was there. Also Wednesday night concerts, Harvard Community Co-op program, garden program at the library, and then they can sleep in parking lot. And number of fireworks were prepared as well. And the number of girls and boys basketball was not there, but they're also regular practices. And St. Margaret's, so they all stated their needs for the. Do I need to go over?
No, I think they're gonna issue minutes, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's Dennis.
Hey, Dennis.
He's still.
Hey, Dennis. Can you hear us?
Yes.
We can't hear him, but okay. So,
And then as we were just going over the parks and.
yeah, but I'm gonna back up a second. We were discussing the study committee that's been discussed a little bit earlier. And we need to have 7 people on the study committee. And so we don't have to necessarily satisfy all the categories that were in the message that we received. We can pick, 7 overall people, and if we don't, for example, we might not necessarily have to have someone from the school board. Because if we satisfy each of those categories, we'd be way over 7. The other news, and then I'll let Manager Bryant add to what I said, is that we're not at risk of losing the grant as long as we have the plan completed by the end of 2025, not the construction, but the plan. So if we're, for whatever reason, forced into, a delay while we get this committee together, it's not a great thing. We want to get moving, but it's not like we're not going to lose the money. Okay. So anything you want to add to that?
So basically, Dennis, I just wanted to tell you then that the process that we talked about to get this figured out is DCNR told me the current members are fine, 3 members from Parks and Rec and Gene being on it. But basically, we just need to find 3 additional people that meet some of those other sort of folks that were on the list they provided. So what we talked about here is that Parks and Rec at your next meeting would kind of make some more decision about like who those other 3 people might be, and would then determine who would be best to make outreach to those people. Once we've confirmed they can participate, then those names should be provided to Borough Council to approve to add to the group. And then Borough staff would then notify DCNR to get their approval. And then you can move on to the next step.
Great, thanks.
So Dennis, while we have you here, do you have any other questions that about the grant or anything with it while you have me and the infrastructure committee here?
No, I'm good, and I'll connect with Gene. I don't want you to have to repeat anything you've already said, but I will connect with Gene after the meeting. If there's anything, any action items I need to take.
Sounds great, Dennis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna go through all of the requests.
Unless, with the minutes will come out. Is there anything that like requires immediate action or?
I think the big thing was the bleachers in the back. I saw you guys working out there yesterday. And the fencing behind the bleachers, the netting around.
Well, see, here's the thing about the netting. So last year during the budget, council had a chat about that, and basically that's kind of what led to the recurring park user questionnaire. Actually, was council rightfully, in my opinion, questioned, the netting, who is really benefiting from that expense? Is it the general public, or is it the specific leagues that are making use of the park? And that led to the discussion that led to the recurring park user questionnaire. And I've communicated that, and Jeff has communicated that several times to NAA. And it's disappointing that that message doesn't seem to have been received. But I understand you're just passing on the message to NAA.
There's also liability.
No, it's not a liability issue.
It's the other one
Oh, it's the other one.
with, on one over.
No, that's not a liability issue.
the-
Yeah, I sorted that out with our liability insurer, both our old one and our new one. And it's not, so all right, I'm gonna say a little bit more about this, but as I shared the email, I was very frustrated. I apologize, I wasn't at that meeting. Several of the things that were presented to Parks and Rec as fact by some of the folks at that meeting were frankly not correct information. So I would not go solely off of the information you all were given at that meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else?
Also, do we have a spreadsheet of all of the uses for the calendar year? Or
We do not.
is that something that we're working on with Parks and Rec? What's the status?
So, well, again, you're getting into a great rabbit hole on this one. So again, part of my great frustration currently with the park is the lack of oversight the borough has historically had over it. And I think it's going to be an adjustment for the recurring users, but I think the borough needs to move in a direction of having greater oversight. And I think that the recurring park user questionnaire is a great first step to get a better sense of what is currently going on at the park, so that as the borough takes on greater oversight, we don't unduly disrupt the things that are currently going on.
It was my sense that finance administration is handling that.
Yeah, so that's my understanding as well.
Okay. Okay, with that, move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
all in favor, aye. Okay, meeting is adjourned at 1:44 PM.
All right, Michelle will catch up later.